Hey guys, what's going on? Thanks for watching the channel. Matt Smith here as always. It is currently 3:40 in the morning. Yeah, I've got some more thoughts I need to get off my chest. So let's call this a little bonus reaction. So if you haven't, go back, watch my post-game recap first. I highly recommend it. Then come back, watch this video for bonus reaction. Gonna build off a lot of what we spoke about there. Just kind of, driving home, I said, just starting to kind of comb through this thing and thinking back, I'm like, no, I got some more to say. Yeah, I got some more to say, and I know the people will enjoy it. So yeah, I got some more to say. We talked about the game plan, and I mentioned in my post game recap how I felt like Pat Shermer, left a lot to be desired for me tonight. I thought it was his worst game plan or worst game called at CU in my opinion, or at least this season. And look, maybe that's wrong. Coach Prime lauded him, said he thought he called a pretty good game, and he was listening to all the calls in the post game. And look, I don't know what happened. I'm not on those headsets. It just felt to me like there were moments tonight where they tried to go fast when they should have been going slow, and they went slow when they should have been going fast. And I thought at the end of the game, like the whole fourth quarter, and maybe I'm reading this wrong, but it looked like it took a while to get play calls in. And I thought Shedeur was frustrated with it. And it just felt like communication was an issue tonight across the board for this team, and certainly none bigger, not any bigger than execution was. Execution was the biggest problem overall for this team. But there's another comment that Pat Shermer made to us when we spoke to him last week, because they were kind enough to allow us to speak to OC and DC last week, Shermer and Livingston. And Shermer made a comment saying, look, we went a lot of 11 personnel, and I looked at my tendencies and went away from my tendencies, but we're primarily a 10 personnel team, and I expect us to do a lot more of that and kind of get back to that. And I thought that was maybe a smokescreen comment, but as some time went by, I went, man, I really hope he doesn't do that. And they did that tonight. And I think that contributed in large part to why they couldn't run the football. I mean, they couldn't run the football. I mean, how about Brian Howell, Daily Camera, my buddy, right? Give his channel a follow and make sure you like. I'm sure Adam and he did a video. How about him with the number I saw on social media, a program low ever for Colorado in rushing yards? You know how long the University of Colorado has played football? A program low. That is, I mean, it's egregious. It's egregious. And here's part of the problem, and I spoke about it in the post game recap as well. But Dallin Hayden should not be this team's starting running back. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I understand that he's coming off a high ankle sprain, and I know he went to Ohio State. He is not their best running back. That's Isaiah Augustive. To me, it's as clear as day. Isaiah got 3 touches tonight. I guess 4 if you count the catch, which by the way, that third down play and Colorado ended up having to go for it on fourth down, which was right before Shedeur's interception, if memory serves. That was a terrible spot. I don't know what they were thinking. They ruled it 4th and 3. He reached, I mean, from at least my vantage point, I didn't see a replay. And again, I haven't watched the game back yet. This is just an extension of my thoughts from afterwards, just kind of thinking some things over. Um, yeah, again, like I said, the 11 personnel, man, I thought it was so effective, and maybe they thought, and this is possible, that they thought that, look, we did that so much against UCF, Kansas State's going to be prepared for that, and we've got to do things that they won't be prepared for. So maybe that was part of it, but I thought that was a huge part of the reason that they struggled to run the football. And I'm going to talk about and pick apart some of this stuff, and I brought it up in the post game recap, but I think before I really go any further, I think it's important to mention this. I recognize, okay, how thin the margin between a win and a loss is. And I spoke about it after the Baylor game. LeJounte doesn't get his arms under a wet football, and Colorado probably loses that game too, right? But that's the difference, okay, in a win and a loss. And you don't know when the breaks are coming. I thought Kansas State got most of the breaks early tonight. I thought Colorado got most of them late. And yeah, they got enough to come back and take the lead despite all of some of this other dysfunction that went on. And I talked about Shedeur and his performance a little bit, and I probably didn't get into enough of the specifics on that, and I want to do that here in this video as well. I just want to acknowledge how close we were to having a entirely different narrative. And that's, I guess, the beauty of sports, right? And that's the beauty of clutch moments and coming through when the game is on the line. And that's what defines you as a competitor. And I don't think it takes away anything because they weren't able to accomplish it. Although the defense struggled tonight. And I thought this was the best offense that they had faced. And it turns out to be the case. Not to mention, I think it's the best offensive player that they have faced to this point in DJ Giddens. Kansas State's running back. 25 carries, a buck 82 on the ground, averaged about 7.3. There was a good stage in that game for a significant portion, at least through three quarters, where he was like over 10.9 per carry. He's a stud. They could not bring him down. And sure, Shiloh had some missed tackles that were really bad. And obviously, he's got to be way better. I mean, just way better. And I hope he will be moving forward, but he's got to give up a little bit of this big hit stuff. I mean, I'm talking to scouts, I'm talking to former NFL safeties who are point blank period telling me that he's not going to get drafted if he plays like that. That's just what they're telling me. He's got to get back to being a little bit more fundamental because I do think he's a damn good football player. He's just trying to make the big play every single time, and that's too hard, right? I mean, like he kind of reminds me of like he's trying to play like Kareem Jackson or something like that, but he's leaning with the shoulder and he's not wrapping up. He's taking his eyes off the play. I mean, how many times did DJ Giddens bounce off him tonight? Anyway, but it's not just him, okay? And he's going to get a lot of, guff this week for how he played, and, deservedly so. He played terrible. But let's just be real. He's their last line of defense. The reason that he was having to make so many plays is because Colorado's defensive line, yeah, probably their worst game of the year. Yeah, I mean, maybe you could talk. Because I thought they limited North Dakota State's running backs. Their quarterback beat them a couple of times on some similar concepts. Same with Baylor. They limited what Baylor's backs could do. Nebraska, I think it was like 130 yards in that neighborhood. Their defensive line has been pretty good this year. I thought this was their worst performance, and a lot of that was just conceptually what Chris Kleiman had his team doing, right? That little inside trap where they pull the guard, and Colorado just did not adjust to it. And I think in it was even worse because there was nobody at the second level. So the second that, your line is rushing downhill so hard, when that trap comes and you just keep biting into it, well, they wanted you to, get into the backfield so they could trap you off. And DJ Giddens, I mean, he's just elusive. He can make you miss. And he'll just shake you off. I mean, there were so many times tonight where you thought you had him dead to rights, and bam, he's got another 15 to 20 on top of it. And that's a big reason why he killed you. And honestly, Dylan Edwards at 7 carries tonight, I thought that was like 5 too many. I would have just kept giving this kid the football. He's probably the best running back in the conference. I don't even think it's that close. I mean, maybe Ollie Gordon, Oklahoma State, but he's not playing well. I mean, gosh, Giddens really showed me something. The problem is Jace Brown, Kansas State's receiver. I mean, you allow him to go off 6 balls, 121 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Their passing attack is just not that dynamic. Now, I thought Colorado did a very solid job on their tight ends. I did. The tight ends were a big focus. They keyed on them, and they did a really good job, especially without Trevor Woods. This would have been a big Trevor Woods game, and I think Trevor would have made a big difference tonight. I do. I do. It's just a guy that you can rely on, and certainly somebody who is adept at figuring out what's going on the other side of the ball. And it's not because of CU that Trevor's not playing, right? That's a call on. I mean, well, I guess in one way or another, but that's Trevor's call. So I know I'm just kind of rambling, but this is kind of the goal here: is just put a quarter in and see what comes out, because I just have a man, what a game, and what a blown opportunity. That's what I keep coming back to. It's just going to be one of those that hits you in waves where you just go. I know this is YouTube, but they ding you if you swear. So, but that's one where you just, you know, it's going to hit you. The disappointment's going to come back time and time again. It's going to keep hitting you because, and there's a couple of parts to this, but that's just right there. It was such an amazing moment. Hood's interception, and then you take the lead. That place was on fire. It was on fire. Oh my goodness. It just makes you sick to think about it. Sorry, I'm looking up what that last touchdown drive was because I was curious how long it took them officially. Oh man. 3 plays, 84 yards, 51 seconds. It was that little swing pass that they dropped earlier to Giddens for 34 yards that got him to midfield and then they hit him over the top, right? And Preston Hodge just got beat. And you know, live there, I'm sitting in the opposite corner of that end zone. It looked like he had great coverage. He was a step behind, but it didn't mean that he was beat. I think he was in the perfect position to play the ball. He just got beat. And sometimes that happens, one on one. It's it's just because I do think, to be honest, I think Colorado's a better football team. But when you lose your best player in Travis Hunter, who's actually, sorry, two of your three best players, okay, that's a significant impact. And on that, really quickly, and I know I'm bouncing around on that, that would have been a death sentence for them last year. To lose Travis Hunter at halftime, down 14-7, going into the third quarter where Kansas State gets the ball first, if they go up 21-7 and you don't have Travis Hunter last year, well, now you're just, I mean, they probably win going away. They probably win going away last year. It speaks to how much better they've gotten depth wise that they could kind of absorb that loss, even though you don't replace him. You just have to do the best you can to at least make up for it, right? And look, Colton Hood, we talked about him as being a really important piece as a fourth corner. Well, he proved why tonight. I mean, that was significant. And then at receiver, you lose Jimmy. Then you lose Travis. You lose Jimmy. That's, I mean, obviously it's a big blow, but you've got guys that can replace that. You lose Travis. Damn. I mean, you're never replacing Travis. Travis and Jimmy, that's tough. But Colorado's deepest at receiver. So you can bring in Omarion Miller. You can bring in Draylon Miller. But his route tree is, it is what it is now being a true freshman. But you also have Terrell Timmons. Well, then Omarion Miller, I mean, what a game. Okay. I mean, it just kind of goes to show you that he probably should have been playing more. I mean, you have so much talent there, but he had 8 balls for 145 yards. Every time he touches the field, it seems like he makes big plays. And unfortunately, that may be the last time he sees the field this year. I think he's really hurt. I think he's significantly hurt. I think he left the field in a wheelchair. He could not put any weight on his leg when they helped him off the field. That's brutal, especially if Jimmy and Travis got to miss more than what they missed tonight. I think both those guys were in uniform on the sideline still. I saw Travis out there, but the video that I saw on the broadcast that was repurposed on social media looked like his shoulder was hanging a little lower. Sounds like it's a shoulder, which is brutal. He was dealing with the knee coming into the game. So I don't know. I mean, if he's not there next weekend, that is significant because Tedero McMillan at Arizona is the real deal. Okay. And you're going to need him in that game. Although Arizona, I'm pretty sure, and while we're sitting here on the topic, I'm pretty sure Arizona lost to BYU today, which BYU looks like a damn good football team. And who knows what's going on this Big 12? This Big 12 is just all over the place right now. Oh boy, they got hammered 41-19. Yeah, I barely watched any college football today. I had a bunch of different stuff going on, but I'll go back and watch that before this weekend. Here's what and I know I got sidetracked. So you lose Travis. Well, now you got Omari and Jimmy rather. So now you got Omarion. You lose Omarion. Well, now you got Terrell Timmons. They could stand those three injuries and Travis, Jimmy, and Omarion. As crazy as that sounds, they had enough. But once they lost Timmons, it was like, well, I mean, there were so many moments tonight where it just felt like it wasn't meant to be. Like it wasn't their night, which is why the Colton Hood moment was like divine intervention, it felt like. Like, no bleeping way. They're about to do this again. They're about to do this again. It's it's just magic. What do you say? It's storybook stuff. And it was right there. And I think it was that moment we're just so caught up in it that you just get beat twice badly on that final drive from Kansas State. And it is what it is. It's Shedeur had a chance. I mean, technically had a chance, but at that stage, you're missing your two of your top four receivers, three of your top five, and four of your top six. Any other team, I mean, look at what happened. Oklahoma was down their top five receivers. They got, blitzed by Texas. Now, obviously, it's Texas, but still, if you lose four of your top six receivers, I'm surprised you even compete. Now, at that stage, that's, the game's pretty much over. You get your final drive, and it's that's a tough one. They just couldn't get it done at the end. And Shedeur, there were moments tonight. I told you we are gonna get back to Shedeur, but there were moments tonight where, it was like he trusted his line so much that he wasn't even looking for the rush. And by the time he did, he just ended up in some really bad spots. And he's, this is kind of what I was talking about heading into the game about with this offensive line. You just don't know what you're going to get on a game to game basis. And UCF's defensive line was not very good. They had allowed, they had generated rather one sack in 3 games prior to that. And then you give up two there. I kind of knew that was fool's gold because this is a much more athletic and just better caliber player across the board defense in Kansas State. And look, they got to Shedeur, pretty good, but I think there are some times where, look, you've got to just trust your first read, get these drive starters. And here's one thing that I would suggest moving forward: dial in your first down drive starters with the quick game. Dial those in. Dial them in. It's not airtight right now. And I think if you do that and set up the run with the pass with Isaiah Augusta, now I think you're cooking with gas. Now, as Carl Weathers says in Arrested Development, baby, you got a stew going. I just think that's your best option. And when they got to the quick game, when they got to their drags tonight, I thought it worked quite well. I did. They just weren't consistent enough with it. And in some big moments, I I think it's a failure in philosophy, or at least recognition, to have some of the route combinations they did at the moments they did, because they were allowing too much pressure, and Shedeur just doesn't have time to allow that to develop. You've got to do a little bit better of a job designing outlets and checkdowns, I think, for him in some of these situations, especially if you're going to ask him to speed up his processing. Because if you're going to ask him to speed up his processing, which he's trying to do, he's trying to make the correct read on every play. Again, I thought Kansas State tonight did a solid job disguising a little bit of what they wanted to do at times coverage wise, and it definitely had him thinking. Like, it definitely had him thinking. And I think at the end of the game, specifically later in the fourth quarter, that might have been part of what it looked like the play taking a long time to come in, was just him trying to sort through everything. But there was a lot of communication back and forth, and I just felt like the operation needed to be a little bit smoother, and it wasn't. And all that being said, they still should have won this game. They still should have won this game, which is why you just grit your teeth and just, want to put your fist through the wall if you're playing on this team, because, man, uh, you didn't even play well and you should have won in some areas. I, that's it. But okay, all right. So that's part of it. And before I get on with picking more of this apart, I want to say the fact that we can sit here and have this moment where you're just frustrated, upset because they lost this game, you had it in your hand, it's a testament to how far they've come. That I could sit here and feel that way. You could sit here and feel that way, watching it at home. It is a testament to the job that they have done with this program, that they would even be in the position to be frustrated by this, because you did have it in your hands. So, silver linings playbook, I guess, but in a 2-year microwave period, I think that's worth noting. I do. Because what they did tonight was proved. No coach from here on out is going to think that they're going to be an easy game to win. They're going to be an easy out. Nobody will. Nobody will. They showed that much tonight. And I think, look, even with some of the deficiencies and the breakdowns in the rush defense tonight, I think more specifically than anything, I also have confidence that I think they're going to bounce back next week because I think they're really becoming that good of a team. And they lost to a very good football team. Kansas State is a top 20 football team. They're that way for a reason. They're damn good. And that's a really good coaching staff. But it's just it just goes to show you that, and this is something that I said to Shedeur and Cam afterwards. I felt like it was worth mentioning in the post game. I said, look, everything's still in front of you. So how do you deal with this? Because obviously this one, you controlled your own destiny and now you don't. I think that's pretty simple, right? It's also easy to say that when you're only 2 games into your conference schedule, but that's where you're at right now. And you're in the jambalaya of all these teams that have one loss in the Big 12. There's going to be a big separation period here that comes the next couple of weeks. But again, it's a tip of the cap to the point that you can be disappointed. And I think it's just a sign of respect to how far along they've come that you can be disappointed. That you can be disappointed. My opinion. My opinion. All right, a couple other things here. Losing Travis, like I said, would have been a death sentence last year, but at receiver and at corner, that's obviously a loss that they can absorb much better this year. Now, clearly, they need him back, obviously. What does this do to his Heisman campaign? I don't know. He's probably going to have to make up for it and probably can't miss any other games. I mean, if we're just going to be honest, I mean, if he misses, I think even 1.5, it's going to be hard. But that being said, there's not a lot of competition at the moment outside of Aston Janty. And did they play today or did they have the week off? Now that we bring up Janty. No, they played today. Oh Jesus, this guy is unbelievable. I mean, this guy's unbelievable. But Travis might have lost the Heisman. They have never given it to a guy like this, a group of 5 running back, but he had 31 carries for 217 yards and a touchdown. They did play Hawaii, though. Okay. They were on the island. But still. And by the way, 3 catches, 20 yards and a touchdown. I don't know. The Heisman doesn't matter as much as the wins do. Obviously, it's just that's a bummer. For that to be derailed by injury sucks. Sucks. Okay. Travis had 3 catches, 26 yards before he went out. So I don't know what to make of that. I hope he's back next week. They're going to need him against Tet McMillan. I mean, obviously, I think with DJ McKinney and with Preston Hodge, they could make it work. But that's a matchup that I really wanted to see. In fact, I think it might be the best individual one-on-one matchup in all of college football this year. I hope Trav's going to be ready to go for that. The question becomes, now that we're just talking about this out loud, the question becomes, what do you do if he's like 80%? If it's like, well, we could give him one more week, he'll play against Cincinnati, and then he gets a week off with the bye, or do we push it next week? That's just, I guess it's all going to be, down to them, down to him and whatever he feels like his body can handle. Hopefully that's not there. Hopefully he's okay. He stayed in uniform. I hope he's dinged up and, he's not like he's going to practice Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and they'll work him back Wednesday. Maybe he doesn't even practice Wednesday this week. He is one guy that I think could do that. Now, if that's the case, you just may want to have maybe more of a limited role for him next week. Maybe you're not looking to play him 130 snaps if you're going to push him out there and he's pushing it on like 80%. Maybe you just dial that back or have a different plan for that where you just utilize him. I mean, because the truth is that's the expectation, right? But you don't want to put him in a bad position. For many reasons. Most of all for the rest of the season. And obviously the biggest one for Travis's health and his future individually, which Coach Prime would never do. So I'm not even stressed. They'll figure that one out. I just hope he's back. I brought it up in my post-game recap, but that 4th and 7 moment, like there's another moment, and I'm talking about in the first half, Colorado converts a 4th and 7. I believe it's in plus territory, and I'll just double check it exactly where. Yeah, they're 4th and 7 at the Kansas State 35. Shedeur completes to LeJonte for 8 yards. That's just another. That's another. I don't want to call it a Mata moment, but it feels like I should. That's the reason why you're going for it on 4th and 7 there. Let's call it what it is. You don't have a kicker that can kick that. I'm watching Utah last night, and Cole Becker, who was here, and they told to go basically because they were bringing their own guy in. He's just every weekend, man, striping them down the gullet, and it's super frustrating to watch other teams come in and outkick you every weekend at Folsom Field. That's so frustrating to me. Special teams is so important. And tonight they gave up one. Overall, I'm actually just curious now that I bring it up. They did give up one big kick return that gave Kansas State pretty good possession, pretty good field position, I should say. But I don't know. It just it irks me. Okay, it irks me. Like Kansas State comes in, and the field goal that they made to make it 24-14, 48 yards. You don't have a guy on your team that can do that. That's dumb, and it sucks. That one really bothers me because that one I feel like would have been a simple solution. But you are where you are. We're moving on. And I did see that they offered Rhett Armstrong, who's a 5-star kicker who was committed to Baylor, okay, and from Colorado. I was over the moon when I saw that. I have been begging for years. Go after the best kickers and punters in the country. Do it every year. This is the best place to kick and punt in the country. I don't know why they don't do that. And now, obviously, they're going after a big fish. Bring them, keep them home. Keep them home. Or go get somebody else that can boot it. But you need that. Altitude is a natural advantage, is a built-in advantage, and they've got to be able to take advantage of it. And they can't. And they're put into moments like they were, their second drive of the game, where they've got to go for it on 4th and 7 from the other team's 35 because they don't have a guy they feel confident enough to send out there. It was ballsy because it's burned them twice, right? It beat them in the Baylor game, and was it Central Florida? No, I don't think it was Central Florida. Maybe it was Colorado State. Regardless, I'd have to go back and look. But it's happened twice this year where they've been in situations like, and now 3 times, I think, where they've been in just no man's land because they don't have a guy who can kick that. And so they converted it tonight, and it worked out. You get points on the board. You score first. It's important, clearly. But offensively, punt, touchdown, punt, downs. Because it was, end a half there. But it's just not enough of an ability to string together drives. And what Kansas State does well, I mean, they string together long drives. Their first touchdown drive was 6 minutes and 22 seconds. They took another 3:31 off with a 6-play punt drive. Then it was 3:26 again. And then they open up the second half with an 8-minute drive and another 4-minute drive. Like, it's, again, and as Coach Prime said, when you can't stop the run, it's not only that you give up rush yards, it's that you also allow them to just chew the clock on you, right? And that's a little bit of what North Dakota State did, but we knew this would be North Dakota State on steroids, and it was to a degree because the talent level is just such a jump, and Giddens is a freak. I mean, he's a freak. I was extremely impressed by DJ Giddens tonight. Really impressed. We talked a little bit about Shedeur, and I ranted about the kickers. Sorry, that one's gonna bug me. Just watching, what's this kid's name? Kansas State. Chris Tennant. Watching Chris Tennant absolutely boom kickoffs out of the back of the end zone. And meanwhile, Stoyanovich is putting them at like the 5 or the 10. It is what it is, I guess. Shedeur. Talked about the sacks. Talked a little bit about needing to get the ball out earlier, needing to scheme with that as well. I would say there's a couple things. So I think first of all, the one thing you need to know about me is I've got as high of an opinion of Shedeur Sanders as anybody that I've met. He is wildly impressive to me. In fact, I'm standing in my spot that I have. I've got a secret squirrel spot that I watch every game from, And there was a gentleman, a police officer actually that came and stood next to me for like the majority of the first half, watching the game with me. And I just, we watched Shedeur just throw dart after dart, kind of leading the team down the field. And I said to this officer, I said, man, next year's gonna just suck without him. It's gonna be awful. I mean, they'll bring in somebody, I'm sure, but so he's just so good. He is. And the fact that we can criticize him when he goes 34 of 40 with 388, three touchdowns, and then obviously a bad interception, that's even crazier. Because especially coming off of the Brendan Lewises and the Drew Carters and the Maddox Cops and the JT Shrouts, and to even complain about who is this guy who's the best quarterback in CU history, it just goes to show you how good he is that we can have this high of a standard for him. He's just got to do a better job in some of those moments of and he wants to do the right thing. It's born out of good intention. And I'd rather it this way than the other way. But if they're going to sit in too high on you, what they're doing is they're testing you. They're testing your patience. And you definitely need to learn to stretch the field more. But there are some moments where he's just kind of glued a little bit too long on some of these, downfield routes. And it's not just him, because there were some route combinations in some crucial situations where you got guys going way too far down the field. Way too far. There is way too much pressure for me to be able to set that up. You've got to give me better outlets, more drags, more crossers, quick, 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 quick. But it doesn't mean that you have to go fast. Okay? You got to go deliberate, and I think a little bit more what's the word I'm looking for? Deliberate and not deliberate's good enough. There's another word, but it escapes me. I apologize. Deliberate's good enough. I think you just have to be very oh my gosh, it's right there. I can't think of it. Whatever. When I talk about being poised, when I talk about being under control, like there are some moments, like I said a little bit earlier, where I felt like they went fast when they should have gone slow, and they went slow when they should have ramped it up a little bit. It's just having a feel for it, and I just didn't think Shermer had it tonight. I just didn't. And I think Shedeur, and again, it's hard for me to say that when I'm not on the headset because Shedeur has so much control at the line of scrimmage. Maybe it was Shedeur that didn't have it tonight, but he made some monster throws. Like he'll have a man if he doesn't come back with a damn good throw if he has a bad one. I mean, he'll come back with a strike if he makes a bad throw. He's incredibly impressive. And there were some very sharp moments, like the drive that made it 21-14. He's in control, he's operating, he's working. I think they're at their best when they're more in 11 personnel running the football, and they're at their best when they can run the ball. But they are when they go when they take their time, you know, and they manipulate their opponent, and they just are very methodical. That took me entirely too long to figure that out. I'm sorry. But again, you'll have to apologize. It's 4:15 in the morning. They've got to be methodical. That was the word that escaped me. Methodical. They did that on the drive that made it 21-14. I think it's when they're at their best. It's not when they're racing fast. They do use tempo, but it's tempo because you're constantly picking up chunks. And I think that's where you got to strive to be. Set up the run with the pass with Isaiah Gustive, chunk in a quick game, methodical. Methodical. Look at that. Even at 4:20 in the morning. Yeah, they bailed on the rushing attack. They do that when they get down multiple scores. It wasn't working tonight, and they weren't putting Augustive in. So at that stage, I mean, if all you're going to do is run Hayden, then yeah, I'd bail on it too. But you got to, I think you could, there's still time to run the football, but it's the timely runs. It's okay. Quick game, quick game, quick game, hit you on the ground, right? And then it's, maybe a couple of runs on the ground. And then you can mix up a little play action. There wasn't much of that, but it's tough to do that when you're constantly in 10 personnel because the defense doesn't really believe that you're trying to run the football, or at least that's your dominant intention. And I felt like they just were in that too much tonight. There wasn't enough formational variety. And it kind of reminded me a little bit more of what we saw early in the season and still. And this is the second time I'm going to say it. I want to rip this piece of paper up because I pick apart, but they should have won despite all that. Just goes to show you how much better they are. That's all. Again, I didn't think they adjusted quick enough tonight. I didn't. I thought there were some things that they needed to iron out, especially with that little trap look, that inside trap look, that they just didn't communicate well. And whether that's a linebacker issue, a formational thing, whether that's just, an execution thing, they just couldn't figure it out, whether it's a talent thing. I think that's what they'll figure out on film. And when we go back and watch it, it'll be certainly more self-evident, but it took them too long. And even still, they should have won the game. But you don't beat yourself in some of those crucial moments earlier. You're able to make tackles. You don't miss as many. You don't allow as many explosive plays, as many busts. And it's a different game entirely, which is why I think they showed me that they are a really good football team tonight in a lot of ways. They just beat themselves. And they're going to have to get over that, but that happens. It does, and it's your first conference loss. What essentially losing tonight does is it eliminates your margin for error as far as the conference goes, is what I would say. I mean, you're probably going to have to finish with one loss to be in that mix. Maybe you can lose another one, maybe, but then it'll probably be tie breaks. I mean, you got 16 teams in this league. Everything's going to come down to tie breaks at the end of the day, which is why I say what you lost was controlling your own destiny. Now I think it's just easier almost in a way because that pressure is not on everything to lock in more on a singular week basis. And there's a monster game waiting for you in Tucson next weekend. The physicality, I just think a lot of it was physicality too. Like that, they have come a long ways, a very long ways. It's just not there yet. It's just not. It's not. And we knew that, which is why you got to continue to be creative, continue to scheme around it, and hopefully that does continue to improve. If Coach Prime sticks around, which right now, I'm getting. I feel more as this season has drawn on that he is going to stick around, and if that's the case, then it's a good building block moving forward from a physicality perspective. It's obviously just going to look different when you don't have, you know, those guys. And by the way, we're halfway through the season now. Let that sink in. Halfway through the season now. One more bye week left. You're 2-1 in conference, 4-2 overall. Okay, Kansas State's still 2-1 in conference. Not like they're undefeated in conference either. Okay, so you win. You beat Arizona next weekend, 5-2, and things are back on track. You drop that one, and I think you probably kiss the Big 12 goodbye. Maybe not. I mean, Utah's lost a couple here. They just lost to ASU. So we'll see what happens, but you've got 6 games left. You've got to make them count. You've got to make them count, and I think injuries now clearly are a big storyline because your best player's hurt in Travis Hunter, and we'll see if we get an update on that on Tuesday. I mean, if I were them, I'd probably not say anything about it. Really, I'd probably be like, I don't know, we'll figure it out. Game time decision. I wouldn't give Arizona anything in that regard. They'll make them prepare for him one way or the other. That's what I would do. In fact, that's what I would do with all these guys, except for maybe Omarion. And that looks like I said, a little bit more severe, clearly, and hopefully he's okay. But uh, based upon early returns, doesn't look like it. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong there. So don't take my word for it. Wait to hear for an update. Um, Altogether, there's more to get to, and I had some more to get off my mind. I feel better now. I hope you do after watching that. I got a bunch of stuff coming up this week, by the way. I'll be jumping back on a Life in Football stream. Shout out Colin Moore, my buddy, and I'll be back with Brian on his channel, Brian Howell. And I'll have content for you all week. I also am going to be talking to former Bronco running back Noshawn Moreno this week on my channel. Noshawn and I will break the games down and talk about what we saw and moving forward what Colorado needs to do. And I'm curious to get his take as a former running back, first round draft pick, and obviously played big time college football at Georgia. So thanks for watching, and now I think I'll go get some sleep. Talk to you soon.